Over the last 5 or so years, my digital life has been completely run by this guy. This is the M1 MacBook Pro, and the annoying thing is, it's still an incredibly competent laptop. It handles writing, research, and all of the daily laptop use with ease, and can even be used for a little bit of light video editing. But what happens when you need more power? Well, that is where this guy comes in. This is the 16-inch M5 Pro MacBook Pro, and it starts from a whopping £3,000. Now, I'm not going to stand here and pretend like that is a normal amount of money to spend on a laptop, because it definitely isn't. But how much machine do you actually get for that £3,000, and is it actually justified? So today I'm going to be taking you through a day in my life with using this machine, from everyday tasks like email and writing, all the way to coding, video editing, and maybe even a little bit of gaming. Hello everybody, my name is Robert and welcome to Tech Pixel. Right, so it is 9 AM and it's time to start off the day with the glamorous world of writing emails, replying to emails, and maybe catching up on some news. This is the kind of work that almost any modern laptop could do. You could even save yourself almost $2.5 grand by buying a MacBook Neo if that's all you're really going to be doing with it. And this is the part of the day where I found it the hardest to justify the price of the M5 Pro, because it quite frankly is just overkill. Emails opened instantly, documents were smooth, web browsing was quick, video calls worked absolutely fine. Nothing about normal everyday use makes the M1 feel ancient, and the M5 Pro is just simply overkill. So if you're going to be spending the majority of your day writing and replying to emails, maybe doing the occasional edits of a Word document or a PowerPoint, then the M5 Pro MacBook Pro just really isn't something that you're going to need in your life. And you could absolutely save a lot of money by going with a cheaper option. The keyboard here is still one of the best laptop keyboards around. It's comfortable, large, and quiet enough. It has that nice Apple thing where you can type on it for ages without really even thinking about it. The trackpad is also still massive and accurate. Honestly, I don't think there is any other trackpad like it on the market right now. Its multi-touch and gesture support are some of the best on the market. Okay, so now it is 10 AM, it's time to do some actual work, and that is going to be a little bit of coding. This is actually where the upgrade kind of starts to make a little bit more sense. And that's not to say that my current M1 MacBook Pro couldn't do programming work. It absolutely could. But the M5 Pro just gives you that little bit more headroom to really push yourself and your code base. The first thing I truly noticed was the screen. The 16-inch display here gives you so much more real estate. You can actually have your code open, a terminal, documentation, a browser preview, and maybe even a cheeky codex window. I won't tell. And it just doesn't feel cramped. Performance-wise, compiling code and running projects happens almost instantaneously. This is on the smaller end of projects. When you've got larger projects or something that's running in the Unity or Unreal Engine, then you're going to start to feel it slow down ever so slightly, but it's definitely not noticeable or really a problem in everyday use. The best way I can describe it is the M5 Pro doesn't feel fast, it just feels like you have more headroom. And that's probably the main difference from the lower end M chips. Sure, they still work well, but you are more aware of their limitations when you really start to push it. The M5 Pro feels like it will just sit there quietly and ask the question, is that it? Which of course for a £3,000 laptop is exactly the kind of smug behaviour you would expect. One potential downside or limitation that you may notice when using this for programming is by default it only comes with 24GB of RAM, and that might sound like quite a lot, but honestly, from a programming standpoint, that will get eaten up quickly. Sure, you do have the RAM swap, and the memory on board here is fast enough for it to not feel like a sluggish experience when using that RAM swap, but you'll quickly run out of memory on higher end projects. Okay, So it's 11 AM and it's time for a coffee break. Now is also a great time for me to say that if you're enjoying this video, then do go ahead and get subscribed down below. Also like, comment, and maybe even hype this video up a little bit. It genuinely does really help me and the channel to grow. And yes, before you say anything, I am going to be using this £3,000 laptop to drink coffee, watch internet meme videos, and kick back and relax. Because having a healthy work-life balance is really important. And seeing the screen and hearing the speakers here is nothing short of mesmerising. The display is genuinely one of the biggest reasons to buy the bigger model. Everything looks sharp, bright, contrasty, and polished thanks to the Liquid Retina XDR display. Whether you're watching YouTube, reviewing footage, reading articles, or just staring at your desktop pretending to be productive, it always looks excellent from any angle. The speakers here are also pretty ridiculous for a laptop. I know that sounds like one of those things that reviewers will always say, but it's true. There's actual depth here, voices sound clear, music sounds surprisingly full, and watching videos on this doesn't immediately make you reach for your headphones. Compare this to something like the M1 model that I've been running, it feels more like a proper media machine. But again, we're running into a similar issue that we did before. Is it a better experience than the M1 MacBook Pro for digesting media? Yes, absolutely. But is it £3,000 better? That is harder to justify. I think the answer is probably not. Is it an enjoyable experience though? Yes, absolutely. This is the kind of laptop that makes even the most mundane or simple tasks feel premium, but you are paying a premium price to do that. Alright, so it's midday and it's time to do a really quick battery check. I started off the day with a 100% battery, and after doing some emails, a little bit of coding and watching some videos too, we're sat at a pretty comfortable 86%. This is actually one of the things that I appreciate most about the Apple Silicon MacBooks. Battery life is not something that you're constantly having to think about, and the battery is monstrously big here, so it's quite easy to get a full day, if not a little bit more, depending on your workflow. This does kinda sound boring, but it really does matter. So far, the M5 Pro feels very strong here. The more interesting question will be whether that changes later when we start doing especially heavy workloads, like video editing and maybe even gaming, because that's where the battery and the thermals should get a proper testing. For my normal morning use though, this has been exactly what I would hope for. Quiet, cool, fast, and not remotely stressed. Having that MagSafe cable to charge the laptop is incredibly convenient too, especially when you're pretty clumsy like me or you have a small toddler running around. If you or they manage to trip over that wire, it's just going to unsnap from itself and it's not going to pull your £3,000 laptop towards the floor. Okay, so it's 1 PM, and this is where the M5 Pro really does start to earn its money. Video editing. Video editing is actually one of the main reasons that I wanted to upgrade from the M1 Pro to the M5 Pro. It's not to say that the M1 Pro couldn't edit 4K footage, it could, it was just getting a little bit slow and cumbersome to do so, especially when we only had 256GB of storage. By default, on the 16-inch M5 Pro, you get a terabyte of storage, and honestly, that is a pretty big jump, especially when you're working with 4K or maybe even 8K video files. Scrubbing through the timeline is significantly smoother. Playback feels more reliable. Exporting is lightning fast. I don't even get a time to make a coffee before the video is ready to be uploaded. Most importantly though, the laptop doesn't feel like it's being dragged into the deep every time that the project gets a little complex. It's also where the larger 16-inch screen really comes into its own too. Editing on a smaller laptop screen, though possible, also feels like negotiating with the interface. Here you have more room for the timeline, viewer, inspector, media browsers, and any other tiny control that the editing software likes to hide in small corners. For a 4K workload, this feels really comfortable. For that heavier 8K 360-degree footage, it starts to feel a little bit sluggish, even for the M5 Pro. It's absolutely usable, but it's not the smoothest 8K footage you'll ever see. If you're editing video regularly, especially for a professional client or maybe even YouTube, then the M5 Pro's price tag starts to justify itself a little bit more. It's still definitely not in the impulse buy region, but it does start to justify its price with a sheer enormous amount of performance. Okay, so it's 3 p.m. and I want to talk about one thing you'll notice every time that you move this laptop. It is big and it is very heavy. The 16-inch model I have here, though, is technically portable, yes, you will remember that you have it at all times. It's not the kind of machine that you just forget you have in your bag. Your shoulders will know it is there, and my almost 30-year-old back most certainly knows that it is there. The benefits here are obviously that massive screen that is great for real estate when it comes to coding and even video editing, and the battery as well, which is just second to none when it comes to battery life. But you are paying a heavy price in terms of actual cost and weight. So it's not just a performance decision, it's also a lifestyle decision. If your machine is mostly going to be living on your desk and occasionally going in your bag, the 16-inch display might make a lot of sense. However, if you're going to be carrying it around on a daily basis, working in tight spaces, or you want something light and easy, this may start to feel like an expensive metal tray and just isn't going to be right for you. For me, the weight of this thing really isn't too much of a problem because I would rather have a bigger screen than having something that is a little more portable in life. Especially with my eyes, I am visually impaired, so the larger the screen that I can get, the better that experience is going to be for me on a daily basis. But what I'm not going to do is sit here and pretend that this is the normal choice for everybody. It definitely isn't, and your mileage will vary as to whether you think the weight is an okay caveat to the amount of performance that you're going to get from this laptop. It's finally 6 p.m, the workday is done and we are entering cursed territory now. We are going to attempt to play some games on a Mac. Traditionally, gaming and Macs have had a relationship that I can best describe as it's complicated. Let's be honest, the hardware really hasn't been a problem for a while. It's been the software support from both Apple and third-party developers. But in 2026, the lines are starting to blur between a dedicated gaming machine and an Apple MacBook. With native ports of some really popular games, like Cyberpunk 2077 coming directly to the Mac, as well as Apple's brand new gaming toolkit that they've released, and compatibility layers across the board like Proton and Wine that were originally built for the Steam Deck, but with companies like GameSir releasing Games Hub for Mac, it actually allows you to use these compatibility layers directly on your Mac to play some absolutely incredible Windows games without too many performance hits. Let me be clear here, this is definitely not a gaming laptop. If gaming is your main priority when it comes to a laptop, this is not where you should be looking. There are cheaper and more capable options out there on the Windows side. The question really shouldn't be, if I want to be gaming, should I buy a MacBook? It should instead be, if I already have a MacBook for my daily workload of video editing, 3D modeling, or maybe even coding, can it also game on the side when I want it to? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Native games like Baldur's Gate 3 here run at full resolution with everything on max. As you'd expect, the display looks fantastic. In particular, its HDR performance here is nothing short of blinding. The speakers are excellent, and with the controller connected, the whole thing feels like a nice premium gaming experience. The more experimental side of things allows you to start running Windows games through compatibility tools. Some games work as you would expect them to, but some are pretty rough. This is kind of similar to how Steam OS is doing it with Proton compatibility layers, but GameSir, the makers of the controllers, have created some software that allows you to do the same thing on a Mac. You can tinker away with Proton versions and config files, but at that point it starts to feel less like a wind down and more like a commitment to getting your Mac to play ball with whatever game you want to play. So the M5 Pro definitely has the power. And the question on software support is kind of a funny one. A lot of games that I've tested do work really well. For example here, Just Cause 3 is running at its highest available resolution, and everything seems to run really nicely at a high resolution and a very low latency. I didn't need to tinker with it either, it just worked out of the box, but then you'll get some other games that just don't want to play ball. In particular, Morrowind from 1990s just didn't work. I suspect this is more something to do with the game being about 30 years old at this point. Sure, it's definitely not a perfect Windows gaming experience on a Mac. There are some hiccups here and there, and the fans on this machine get absurdly loud. Everyone says that the M5 Pro chips are really quiet and the fans don't really ramp up. Well, they do, especially when you put them under a gaming workload and it becomes almost deafening. So after spending a full day with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the question I have is it really an upgrade from my M1 MacBook Pro? And the answer is yes, absolutely. This thing is a generational leap, and especially when you consider this thing really is only 5 years old. I'm not going to pretend this is the perfect laptop for everyone. If you're only going to be writing emails or editing documents, then save yourself $2,500 and buy yourself a more competent laptop for your use case. However, if you're going to be doing a lot of video editing, maybe even some 3D modeling and some programming perhaps, then there is no better laptop than the M5 Pro right now. Bang for your buck, you are getting an insane amount of performance. And if you want to do a little bit of gaming on side, you still can do that too, and it's actually a very nice gaming experience. This laptop will keep me going for many years to come, and I couldn't be happier with it. Anyway guys, why don't you let me know what you think of the M5 Pro MacBook Pro in the comment section down below, and of course while you're down there, get subscribed, hype it up, do all of that good stuff because it genuinely does mean the world to me. Anyway, my name's been Robert, you have been watching Tech Pixel, and I will catch you in the next one.